This episode of The Edge is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek.fm at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the nonprofit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode, join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
Hi, I'm Rekha Sharma, and I played Landry on Star Trek Discovery. You are listening to The Edge on Trek FM.
What have you done out there on the edge of Federation space?
Welcome, listeners, to another episode of The Edge, Trek FM's dedicated podcast to Star Trek Discovery. I'm your host, Patrick Devlin, and joined with me, as always, is my good friend, Amy Nelson. Amy, how you doing?
Hi, I'm doing great. So glad to be podcasting about Discovery again.
Yes, you do that quite often.
I do. These seasons really get me talking Discovery a lot.
Well, yeah, it's good. I mean, I don't talk about it as much as you do, but I'm glad to do this every week. I mean, and these episodes have been really getting good, so.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I was thinking about postcards and how I read everyone's comments and thoughts, and that, of course, is influencing how I view the episodes. And I really like it because it gets me to think about some of the finer things, and a lot of fans pick up on stuff that I didn't even notice. So it is really good.
Yeah, this week I was unable to avoid it. I looked up a lot of things on social media, and we'll get into it when we talk about the episode.
And what episode is that?
What episode is that? That's a good question. Some kind of project. Might have had a name that was once used before.
Yeah, some Greek mythology.
Like yeah, something.
Again.
But yeah, no, it's Project Daedalus from, which is episode number
9.
Yes, 9 of the second season of Discovery. So, and it's really, the storyline's really picking up at this point. You know, it's, in my opinion, the last 4 or 5 episodes, they've been on fire, So
I just want to, real quick, before we get into the meat of things, like, I was loving episode 1, 2, 3, and then we're getting into, because it was more episodic. Like, okay, here's a signal, let's go investigate, here's New Eden, and it just sort of wrapped things up. And then, you know, we had the Klingon story, and now these episodes are truly an arc. How do you feel about that?
Honestly, I prefer if it was just I wish they'd pick a style. Let me put it that way.
Yes.
I don't care. I don't care if we're episodic. I don't care if we're serialized. But can we do one of them?
See, yeah, because I felt the shift, and I'm like, wait, I thought we were going to, you know, explore these red anomalies, have a cute little episode, you know, all tied up, and then go on to the next, while in the background exploring who the Red Angel is. But now these past couple of episodes, it's just been...
Yeah, but I also feel that the writers are kind of not fully getting a grasp of this either, because there's a major story that happens in this one episode and one episode only, and then... Okay. I mean, it's going to have ramifications going down from here, but all right, fine. Yeah. I'll start now. So this is such a polarizing issue too in this episode, because some people are extremely upset that Airiam died, and other people couldn't care less because we didn't see anything about her other than she was hacked before this.
Right.
You didn't even know for a fact whether she was a human, a cyborg, a robot, or what she was. Until apparently she's married.
Yeah.
And he dies in a helicopter crash, which leaves her
shuttlecraft. Helicopter.
Whatever.
What are you, 19th century?
No, I was playing a video game, and it happens in a video game. But whatever. See, but he dies, right, in a crash, and that's what leaves her to have all these
So yeah, the thing is, they have this crash, and apparently her husband dies, and she is augmented.
Okay, yeah, sorry, listeners. I cared this little that even watching it twice and 3 times, I didn't pay attention to how this happened. It's just, I'm sorry. I don't care if she died. And I'm one of the ones on that side of the fence. But
let's try a little more compassion, please.
No, I don't know the character.
Oh my gosh.
If you went to some random starbase, right? And some random person was talking to you and then they get sucked out into space, I'd be like, oh, sucks for him. Moving on. And that's the same thing that happened here.
It still is a human life.
Okay, the actress who plays her is alive and well. I'm positive of that. So, I just don't care. It made no impact. The impact that they were going for on me personally, it didn't work.
Okay, so there were a lot of comparisons because we have seen entire stories of a character in one episode and then they die. Case in point, Lower Decks, and we have Ensign Daxa.
That's how much we care about him.
Right. And so it was funny because we just did an episode on Earl Grey about this. And I was like, I did not even remember her dying. So I totally get where you're coming from.
No, look, I get this is a little bit more because we have actually physically seen the character through the show. But I had no attachment to that character whatsoever.
Right.
And if they could have killed her, just taken her off the ship, moved her, done anything, so people were arguing with me online that I was cruel and heartless and whatever, and fine, I'm okay with that. But I would then challenge them to tell me one thing they knew about this character other than that she was hacked before this episode, and I didn't even get a go screw yourself as an answer. Like, people just disappeared from the internet at that moment. It was like Thanos snapped his fingers and all the people who disagreed with me were gone.
Okay, so let me tell you one thing that we know about her. From season one, we know that she stood with Michael, and in the end, the last episode, which I know you don't care for, but, she was part of the bridge crew that did receive honors and that stood with Michael Burnham and that went through the entire process. And so that built a bond. Now, whether we saw that on screen or not is irrelevant, but we know that she is honorable and loyal to Discovery. So we know that much about her character. We also know that she obviously is in Starfleet. So we know that there is some common characteristics that Starfleet embeds. So we know that about her. Yes, I totally get your point. We don't know that much about her. And we learned it all within this one episode, and then she died. Nonetheless, it does further the story about control and the purpose of what that is, which is, to me, very, very exciting.
Yes, but, all right, humor me. Take out the whole Airiam thing, and we just end up there, and they find out that the computer has killed everyone, and that the computer is now taking over Section 31, right? Control is now taking over. We're in the exact same spot without the whole Airiam
Except there was
story.
no conduit for Control to gain access to the computer.
I could have written that in.
It's a computer. She was the conduit between Control and the probe, or not the probe, excuse me. She was the conduit between the sphere's data.
Yeah,
right?
no, okay.
That was the main purpose, and getting it to the computer. Like, that download process had to be transferred over to Section 31. So it had to be someone. You couldn't just say it could be.
Yes, but fine, but no, I could definitely write that it's hacked Discovery. But besides that fact, all right, you're right. Her death still means nothing to me.
Okay.
So, like that's my problem. And you know how to fix this? When she gets hacked, tell me she has a husband right after that. Instead of last episode wasting time with them looking over to her, and because she's the one who's feeding information back to Section 31, show me that she's good friends with Tilly last episode. It fixes the whole problem. If they just start this, it probably needs more than 3 episodes for me to truly care as if it was a main character, but that fixes a lot of it. Me and Brandon just talked about something similar with Trip. He didn't die, but something happening with Trip where all of a sudden because he was in a near-death experience, he starts losing his mind and he starts spiraling out of control. And it happens in one episode. Now, it's my favorite series of Star Trek ever. It was the most ludicrous story ever written by them because it happens in one episode.
So I do agree, and there have been some complaints about that as I, go through and read all the comments. And I do agree because we have these characters and people have been clamoring about it since season 1. We need to know more. What's going on? And we have gotten more, but it's so easy to simply put in a line or two, especially them sitting and sharing a meal or playing the game that they were playing, Codescott.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. To show that there's that relationship or to even get some kind of backstory that, Airiam was married before. It doesn't even need to fit with the storyline, just them in passing. Like when Owashakan went down in New Eden, like we could have found out a little bit more about her. With Tilly, we could find out a little bit more. We got a little bit in the short treks, with her mother drama and stuff like that. But Emily Coots, Kayla Detmer, we could definitely, there's plenty of opportunity to learn just a little bit of backstory and where this character came from. And so, yes, I do understand your point. We get it all in this one episode about Airiam.
And it's not even that much. Like, so after I first watched it, I was like, wow, they dumped all of her story in here. And then I go back, and if you watch it, it takes up not many minutes of the episode to tell her whole story.
Right.
That's another problem. This wasn't a whole story based on her.
Yeah.
And then she dies.
Her death is not the A plot.
No, not even close. So,
no.
But the reaction from the crew would lead you to believe that the writers really thought we were all going to have that kind of reaction.
Well, and again, if you were serving now 2 years, like I think the time that they spent on each character realizing and seeing her, blown out of the airlock, I think that was well deserved. It honored her death. It had an impact. I was a little questionable about Detmer, holding on to the arm of, I think it was Reese or Morgan, or I get those two confused.
I don't remember who, but
the one, yeah. And she sort of held on to his arm, and I was like, that maybe is a little bit overdoing it. But if you've served, and I only know as teaching, especially in an at-risk school, if you serve a very difficult community, if you've served in battle, like you have this affinity and this connection that cannot be broken. And so when you lose someone, whether it's seen on air or not, they need to have respect. And I think if they wouldn't have done that, it would have been way worse. So I appreciate the time that they took to represent that Airiam is dead.
No, okay, I agree with you. And I did serve. So I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying that their reaction to that doesn't affect my reaction enough.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I understand the impact it has on them, but it just doesn't really impact me still, even though. And I serve, so I understand what you're talking about, and I get it. Maybe I'm just cold. But it wasn't enough. I mean, maybe it's because I did need to see them spending, like the scene with Tilly, can you just stand with me until this is over? Like, it seems so forced because they were trying to get it in here so you understand why she says what she says later.
And talking about that, it was weird. Did Airiam know when she was transferring over? I have to say no, because if I knew that I was compromised in some way and trying to kill my friends, like I would hope that I would say, you got to lock me up right here and right now.
Which she does at the end.
Do you think that Airiam knew that she was changing by these red dots, that her programming, like Data multiple times would say, well, I need to run internal diagnostics. Like, did she not know? But then it sort of felt like she did. So I was very confused about that part.
This is the mess ups in writing that I've been talking about on a lot of episodes, where they say one thing and then they contradict themselves later. She didn't know. She didn't know until she knew. And then it was, well, you got to kill me. It's the only way. You just figured it out. Like, How did you just now figure out that this is happening? It would have made more sense if she just didn't know.
Yeah.
They wanted to get to that last line before she dies. That's what they were trying to get to. The important part of all of this, really, is what she says to Michael at the end. But it wouldn't have made sense unless she knew what she knew when she was compromised, right?
Yeah. So I guess I'm learning more because, especially doing these podcasts, like I'm learning more when people say the writing is sloppy, the writing is lazy. I guess this would be a case in point where the writing doesn't quite match up, where normally I would just watch it and say, oh, okay, and accept it. So I think with a deeper analysis, we really do have to analyze and say, yeah, either she knew or she didn't. And even if she was questioning, again, going back to season 1 and what we know of her character, she would have removed herself from the bridge.
You would think so.
Yeah.
You know, she wouldn't know that Tyler's locked up. I mean, if she was compromised when he was getting sent to his quarters to be detained to quarters, fine. But at some point, she asked Tilly to stand next to her, right? So she was her at that moment, right? So how come at that point she didn't realize that she was the cause of Tyler being arrested?
Yeah.
I know he wasn't really arrested, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, in his quarters.
And she didn't say, hey, it wasn't him, it was me. You know,
Right.
Lock me up. But she doesn't. And then she's like, you have to kill me. It's the only way to save you. Like...
Yeah, and one thing that again, I think she had that realization when she made the minds stop, because I think that was her, and then the mind stopped and she did the download complete, message sent, and she had to know that was her. And I felt like at that moment she really should have known, and she should have got herself locked up. But then so the fact that she didn't do that made me feel like, okay, Control has complete control over her systems, which means she shouldn't have been able to go back and forth. So,
and she shouldn't have stopped the mines in the first place.
She needed to stop the mines because she needed to get on Section 31.
Okay, right. So Control stopped the mines so she wouldn't die. Okay,
right, yeah.
Right, you're right. Not how I saw it, but yes. Then she goes over, but then I don't know. It's just weird. I mean, I guess she could have learned it at that moment, but that doesn't.
Yeah,
it just doesn't make sense. I'm sorry. It just I get it. People are like, oh well, because people are gonna. I know it. I can hear it. I can hear the arguments now, and it's when Tilly talked to her, she got through to her. That's a very Star Trek thing. Yeah, I get it. It just also makes for really lazy, easy writing to get to this point too. There's better ways of doing it. You could have just had her being evil, telling Michael the same things, just not warning her.
Oh, so that transformation. Well, I sort of do buy that because you have that internal fight, which we've seen many times. Like, you know, you're on death's door and it's like, hang on just a little bit longer. And that will to survive. I think Airiam had that will to survive and be who she was and doesn't.
And then I don't think she should remember what Control is making her do when she's doing the fight. You get what I'm saying? Because that's the problem.
See that.
The problem is she flips back and forth, right?
Yes.
And when she's one, she doesn't remember what the other, or vice versa. Okay,
right.
That I can even buy.
Then she should have woken up and said, "What am I doing here? What am I doing here?"
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
each time that should have happened.
Or at the end when she tells Michael what she tells her, you know that. Okay, so I just keep beating around it. I'm just going to say it. When she tells Michael, I'm supposed to kill you, and this is all because of you. Yeah. She should have said it as Control. If she said it as Control, that this is all because of you, then you don't have any logical inconsistency here. The fact that she said it as Airiam means that Airiam remembered what Control was doing.
Yes.
So how come she didn't always remember what Control was doing when she was out of it?
Yes. Yeah, that goes to the point, like, why didn't she recognize it and, you know, confine herself to the brig or whatever?
Right.
Yeah.
Even, like, so, because they wanted to make her seem like she was dying for a noble cause. I get it. So even if she was going back and forth, no logical reason why she knows Control wants Michael dead and it's Michael's, all this is Michael. Mm-hmm. That's my problem.
Which goes to a very exciting part of this story. And I didn't really catch it until my second rewatch. And thank you for allowing me the time to do that.
No problem.
So, listeners, I just rewatched it again and am so excited to have this reference back to an Obel for Charon and getting the sphere and how the data that was downloaded, Section 31, or Control more specifically, wanted all the information on AI. That totally excited me because I love going and these callbacks to the references and episodes that we've seen before. Like, and I had to get it. I was like, well, I thought Control was Section 31, but they're different. Did you know this?
Not initially, no. I mean, on my first watch, but when they first started talking about it, Control just seems like the computer that is Section 31, right? But obviously that's not the case.
Yeah,
it's actually a computer. But it's a computer that everyone ends up uploading information to, and now admirals are being locked out.
Yeah, so I really loved this. Like, the Control is, and I wrote it down, a threat assessment system, which I think is amazing. And I think a lot of corporations, a lot of like entities really need to develop, but then we get this one step in sci-fi that if you create a system like Control, that it's going to take over. And I really think, like in education, again, sorry, this is what I know. Like in education, we need all departments talking to each other so that we can create a better educated student. We need the dean, which is when you get in trouble, to talk to the attendance office, to talk to the curriculum, to talk to registration. All of these things need to talk to each other so that we can make an educated response to what's happening to a student. And that's exactly what Control is programmed to do. Like, it is made, all the captains, all the admirals, like you said, are uploading their information. What did we learn here? We're over here in this system, over here. And then Control is going to create a strategic decision on what should happen and what the Federation should do. Like, it's amazing. And I love the idea that you're gathering information from every single point and every single perspective. Like, that's what we should do. But then with all of that information comes power. And so I think that's where I love this about this episode, that Star Trek is taking it. It's like, okay, information is power, and now Control has power.
Yeah, well, they iRoboted it, right? I mean,
yes.
This is the point of iRobot, is they give, even though robots have the 3 laws of robotics where they can't harm humans, they find a way around it so that they can do it. They can circumvent the rules as long as they feel like it's a greater good. Now, we didn't hear anything about a greater good yet, but that's the point, right? I mean, that's the point of that computer system, to figure out what the best good outcome would be.
Yeah, what's the best strategy?
But then the initial way of using that system was ultimately the admirals would decide to take its recommendations or not. And it decided, well, you guys aren't smart enough. I'm going to just decide for myself.
Yes. Scary.
Yes, very. All right. Take a step back. Let's talk about why Admiral Cornwell came in the first place.
Yes.
Because that has a lot to do with this, right? So initially she shows up, and it's kind of weird to see an admiral because they're fugitives at this moment, right? When the episode starts, they're running. Yeah, they were running at that point.
Oh, you mean Discovery and Pike?
Yes.
Yes.
So, but an admiral comes up, and which is weird. But then we find out pretty quickly that A, she wants to question Spock, but B, this whole issue with Control came up, and that's why she doesn't want to feed any information in, because then it can anticipate her moves. Right,
because Pike has serious concerns about Section 31, especially with his dealings with Tyler.
Yes, absolutely. All right, first we see the questioning with Spock, right? And one of the things I liked about that was they did a lie detector test.
Okay.
And they almost drove me crazy with this, and then she kind of backtracked and fixed it, but
no, it drove me crazy.
No, it didn't really bother me, because at first she says he's telling the truth, right? And then, thankfully, because I looked at my wife and was like, or he believes it, one or the other. And then she does say, or at least he believes he does. Now, the part of that drove me crazy is then Saru goes, then what's the problem? Well, just because he believes it's true, just because someone passes a lie detector test doesn't mean they're innocent. Conversely, just because you fail it doesn't make you guilty either, but it's another philosophical debate for another time. But if he is psychotic, then he would just believe his own lies, and it would come up with true all the time, right?
Yes. So the reason why I absolutely, it took me out. I have an issue when people say 100%. Well, this non-deceptive detection device is 100% accurate. BS. I'm sorry. I can't. Yes. And when people say that they agree with you more than 100%, it just red flags. It annoys the crap out of me, people. So stop saying it. You cannot give more than 100%. I know. Okay. I get it. But to me, like, this test is 100% accurate. Really? We're dealing with a human being. We're dealing, obviously, with a Vulcan. It's not going to be 100%. And so you're right. The fact that she says, well, he believes that he's saying this.
Right.
That makes it okay. But up until I heard that, I was like, whatever. No test is 100%. I'm sorry.
So I was in the same boat as you, but they did say that one line, which means the results can be 100% accurate. The problem is he could really believe something that's false.
Right.
So the results aren't 100% accurate to what happened. They're 100% accurate to what he believes.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So he believes he's not lying. He truly and completely believes he's not lying. I mean, he's not. So, but we still don't know that at that moment. Oh, I guess we do because we saw his memories, but they don't know that at that moment.
Right. Right.
But he still completely believes what he's saying. Whether that's true or not, he believes it. And that part, I can buy being 100% accurate, I guess. Mm-hmm. There's ways to fake anything, but whatever. We'll just go with it.
So did you totally love when they had the hologram of Spock's brain? It totally made me think of Spock's brain.
Yes.
We did an episode, Earl Grey and Standard Orbit crossover, where we talked about the quote-unquote worst episodes, and we talked about Spock's brain and Shades of Grey. Oh my gosh, that totally reminded me. And I thought, oh, that's so wonderful. I like Spock's brain. But that was just like right there. And it was sort of spinning and it was just like TOS. And I thought, they're still paying homage to the original series. And I really do appreciate that about Discovery.
Yeah, so do I. I do like that they keep throwing little things in there. And again, I've said this before. This is fan service done right because you don't need to know that to enjoy the scene itself. Like the scene, the impact of the scene doesn't really lose anything. It's just a little extra for those of us who've been around watching for a little longer. So I enjoy that a lot. So I wanted to get into, now we found out, we get to Section 31 with Admiral Cornwell. And well, first off, I did like the fact that she said it was her mission, but it's your chair. Yeah, I thought that was a cool scene. Because that's exactly how I think it should be, in my opinion. But he was willing to give it up, and she said no, which I thought was the right move. And now once we're here, though, she gives them a path that'll take them past the mines or whatever. And the mine scene. Oh, sorry. Before I get into that, we had talked about Tilly saying "freaking" and why I thought it would be okay on this ship. And we heard poop storm, get off my butt, and who the hell was I talking to? All on the bridge of this ship in this episode. I think reacting to freaking is ridiculous now.
Interesting. I got the get off my, but I didn't pick up on the other two. Now, to be fair, the F-bomb is a bomb because it does carry more weight than the other swear words.
When Saru made comment about it, she said freaking. She said, because you told me not to curse.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's not a big deal. It's just, my point is, those rules of you can't talk like that here should definitely be out the window by now.
Maybe.
You had it said 3 times on the bridge in front of an admiral. He goes, what kind of storm did you get me into? When they first showed up and the mines were there.
I think there's a hierarchy to swear words, so.
I don't think freaking is a swear word.
Well, it's not freaking, but there was the F-bomb in season 1.
No, I know, but we're not talking about that instance. We're talking about the one that happened this season with freaking.
I know, that was cute. That wasn't even an issue, was it?
No, my point is that Saru's reaction to it was ridiculous.
Well, freaking does imply the F-bomb, which in hierarchy has a greater weight.
So my point is, whatever. It's not a major point, but it's a point. So when we do get to here, now they're going to talk about the mines, right? So OO says, are those mines? Saru responds with, the Federation does not permit the use of mines. Pike says, no, they do not. And Cornwell says the Federation didn't build them. Most ridiculous line ever by anybody. Pike goes, I call that a distinction without difference. He's 100% right. Using them is using them, whether you make them or not. And then Cornwell goes, we were under attack by Klingon warships with cloaking abilities. Sometimes in war, the terrible choice is the only choice. And Pike's answer is, and I'm going to liken this to Benjamin Franklin, in fact, but Pike goes, giving up our values in the name of security salutes the battle in advance. I'm curious, did you sideline the Enterprise because you knew I'd never stop reminding you of that? And Cornwell said, you sat out the war because if we'd lost to the Klingons, we wanted the best of Starfleet to survive. As this conversation makes clear, that was you and all you represent. Now, in American history, Benjamin Franklin once said, those who would give up essential liberties to pursue a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. And that's kind of what Pike is saying in this conversation. He's saying you already lost because you gave up what made you you.
I completely agree. And I'm so glad that you include it because I also, wrote that down in my quotes. It's like, that is a distinction without a difference. Like, it doesn't matter. You're still using them. And I think that's right. And the fact that you're using it, again, exactly what he says is like, you have already lost the fight by using it because you've lost yourself.
Exactly. Now, there could be an argument made that outlawing mines is a little ridiculous in and of itself. But since we did, everything else after that, you're wrong the moment you use them.
Mm-hmm.
You're wrong. You're not Starfleet anymore. And wasn't this a problem in season 1 to begin with, that a lot of things were being done non-Starfleety? And we kind of boiled it down to, well, Lorca wasn't really from this universe, so...
Okay, so, but the argument is, and I'm not saying I agree with it, I'm just saying that the argument is, if you are dead, then you can't enjoy. You don't have the luxury to have your morals if you are dead.
If you have no morals, it won't matter if you're alive.
Well, that's the argument.
So, no, I get it. But again, it's hard for Starfleet to stand up and puff its chest out about being so moral when it's clearly in this era at the moment not, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, some people did push back heavily on the Pike was okay with the compliment once he got the compliment that he was the best of Starfleet, but come on, people. They were trying to write a legit reason why he was gone for 5 years and missed the war and everyone keeps torturing him. They were trying to give an out to that story, and the out is that if they had all died, he wouldn't come back and he'd restart Starfleet somewhere else.
So I wanted to bring this back to season 1. Do you remember when Saru was questioning his command ability and he asked the computer, to show me the top commanders, and Pike was listed as number 1. And at the time we were like, ooh, there's Pike. There's a connection to TOS. Well, now here it is playing into effect what we see, and that what we hear Cornwell saying, you are the best. That's why he was listed number 1.
And that's good writing.
That is excellent writing. I was so glad.
They wrote that in. Now, I don't know if they actually had written this back then, whatever, but that shows you, that makes sense. If he wasn't listed on the top 5, we'd be looking back and going, well, if they thought he was so great, how come he wasn't even listed in the top 5?
Right. But he was number 1 right there on the top.
He didn't have to be number 1 for this account, but he was, which makes it even better.
Yeah.
Because the other 4 could be dead, so you couldn't send them. But like Archer's listed on there too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what position. I think 4. For some reason, 4 sticking out.
Yeah, I was thinking 3rd, but 4th could be right, yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember where, but he was on there. But like, obviously you can't send him, right? He's dead. So, but the fact that they put him number 1 and then they're telling him you're the best, that's good writing.
Yep.
That was set up in season 1, not 15 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I like that connection.
I didn't really think about it until you said it, but I like it. So, and like I said, it's good writing. That's the kind of writing the show is supposed to be, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not always that way. About Admiral Cornwell being here too. So she's hesitant to talk to Starfleet because she thinks that they're after her. But then we find out that the admiral she's blaming, I can't remember her name.
It's Patar.
The Vulcan extremist. What is it?
Patar.
Right. Okay. So Admiral Patar, she thinks is now an extremist and flipped on her. So that's why she's really hesitant, and that's why she seeked out Pike in the Discovery to try and get back to control and reprogram it or unprogram it or whatever. As we get closer, the minds come to life, even though they have their shields down, which is what they're attracted to. The minds come to life. That was the coolest way around a system I've ever seen.
Like, what do you mean?
Because the system, all right, so they can't figure it out, and no matter what they do, the minds keep hitting them, right?
Right.
And they turn around, and someone says it's not a game. And Michael goes, well, what if it is a game? Mm-hmm. And that's when Pike realizes, or she says, you have to do different things because it's after 2 or 3 moves, it
being
realizes
chaos
what you're doing.
theory and spontaneous.
Correct, which is what Spock was just doing to her in a chess game, by the way.
Yes.
So she didn't catch that, but that's exactly what was happening. We'll talk deeper about that whole conversation because that's more. The chess game pertains to this. The conversation pertains to everything else. But so she just, Chekhov's chessboard. She's just seen this happening to her because he was making illogical moves, which we've seen in other episodes of Star Trek where the way to beat the Vulcans was just to do illogical things because they can't comprehend the next move then.
Right.
We turn around and what we see, instead of Pike just trying to do things he wouldn't normally do, because eventually you'd become predictable again because you're only one human trying to figure this out. So the computer would eventually realize you're just doing the opposite of what would make sense and do that. He just asks everyone for a different move because every different person would command differently. It was phenomenal.
That is a mathematical concept that I just want to talk about because when I do my lesson about probability and randomness, like even our brains, like if I say, Patrick, choose a random number between 1 and 100, like your brain cannot be random because it's going to think about and the context of in your life and your brain has connections. And so to be truly random, there is no such thing. Like randomness is programmed. And so I loved the fact that he was choosing different people because that is true randomness. And I loved the mathematical concepts behind that. It was brilliant writing as far as a mathematician goes.
Yeah, I thought it was great. It was awesome. I mean, it didn't beat the system, but it held it off long enough to allow the system to be shut down so that they didn't blow up.
Okay.
I know we think the system was going to stop anyway, but
right. We won't go back to that argument.
But that part's bad writing. But that's what it was trying to show you at the moment, right? That it was just trying to survive long enough to get shut down, and then they forgot why they were shutting it down.
Right.
But anyway.
But that's a great mathematical concept of randomness.
Oh, yeah, I agree. And it was portrayed so well because he did use everyone on the bridge. And at first, they didn't understand what they were doing. Like you could see in their faces, they weren't really sure why they were just yelling out random things, even though it was just explained to them. They weren't sure how this was going to work, but it worked. And I think the only way you could do it even better to make it slightly more random is if they didn't know what they were saying.
Well, but they knew they had, flight patterns.
No, I know. That's not what I mean. Like, the only way to get more random is like you say something and then I say something, right? And then someone else says something off of mine. Oh. But they've heard the last two, so that is still playing a
like I would choose Delta and then you would choose the number. And then that would be our flight pattern.
Right. And even then, like the next person that hears it would know not to use those. You know what I'm saying? So that kind of skews the randomness a bit, but not enough for the computer to figure it out. It's just, it was just interesting. And obviously it would suck if it was a quiet scene. So it wouldn't make any sense for them to just, you punch something in the computer. You punch something in the computer, Yeah,
if he would have only done it himself, like because there wouldn't have been any randomness because it was him. So the fact that he was choosing different people was pretty darn awesome. But the whole time this was going on, and not to bring up the subject again, I was like, Airiam's on bridge. She's just telling the
That's
drones
what I
and the
thought
minds.
Too.
Okay.
When they were showing you downloads, I was like, she's just telling the minds what flight pattern
I know, what pattern to follow. Okay.
But at that moment, But at that moment, she was Airiam, knowing what Control was doing, not telling anyone she was talking about them.
She's flipping back and forth, so we're just let it be.
It's so terrible.
But I did like, I mean, that whole scene, was it not cinematic? Like the scenes, and I'm sorry, there was too much turning and tipsy-turvy. We're going to get to it in the nitpicks. Don't worry, listen. But it was so cool that they were coming and that the bombs and the explosions and the whole space scene was so beautiful. I really, really enjoyed it. In fact, last night I went and saw Captain Marvel, I think it is. Okay. Not a fan, but whatever. So I saw it on the big screen.
You just upset a lot of people listening.
Oh,
not just me
so
today.
Sorry. Don't send the hate mail. But I saw it on the big screen, and literally I was sitting there going, you know what? This is the same that I watch week in, week out with Discovery. I'm that much impressed with what we're seeing in Discovery.
Oh, no, the graphics and everything are phenomenal.
Yeah, that
Top
whole
notch.
space scene, that was just as good as what I saw in Captain Marvel.
So one of the things about this type of way of getting television, and I've heard it a lot on other podcasts about other things. For instance, wrestling is now moving exclusively to streaming. And the reason is it's significantly cheaper to produce television that way than on network TV, than actually on the networks.
Interesting.
Yes. So they can use that budget money for other things. Wrestling uses it for pyrotechnics, bigger buildings, stuff like that. Star Trek can use it for better graphics, better special effects and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So everyone was up in arms, but we probably don't have the same exact visuals if we are on CBS. Because more money has to be put into the network side of things than the creative side of things. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of networks are now starting to try and ramp up online streaming shows exclusively.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. sense.
Yeah, and you know what? I'd rather a better product than worry about where it's being aired.
Yeah.
So I pay $10 a month. Okay. But I'm getting a show that's movie quality in my house every week.
Every week, yes.
So,
sorry to sideline, but that was important. I wanted to put that in.
No, I think it's a great point because that's a movie flight scene.
Yeah.
And to talk back about the show itself, I love the fact that those mines were blackout mines. And what that means is they completely screw up your navigation. So she thinks she's upside down. She thinks it's not responding.
Yeah.
And Admiral Cornwell's like, just keep flying. You're wrong. It's the mine. Just keep flying.
Trust yourself.
Yes.
Which there's a theme there that we learn about Spock. Just real quick, I know it's not on the outline, but, Spock talks to Stamets, and it's like, you should trust your ability. You should know, maybe you're doubting yourself too much. I thought that was very poignant. His conversation with Stamets, a lot of people didn't like. I at first questioned it, but in my rewatch, I absolutely adored it. And I don't think that Spock was speaking out of turn, which I know a lot of the fans had complaints about. But it's like Stamets went up to Spock first and said, you know what? Burnham risked her life to bring you here. So he was already talking personal nature. And that's when Spock says, well, maybe I could give you an observation of my own. And then brought up Culber and stuff like that. But I thought that whole scene was very, very good. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I thought it was a great scene, and I don't think he's out of place at all. Like you said, Stamets went up to Spock and started the personal family talk. Mm-hmm. And he didn't just blurt it out either. He said, can I give you an observation?
Right.
Stamets had to know he was going to be talking something pretty personal at that point, right?
Right.
Well, the observation is the lilies don't look nice on the corner. Like, I mean, it was obviously going to be something important, so he opened up the door, and that's what it is. And like you said, I thought it was a great back and forth between the two of them because they both hit very important notes that both of them kind of needed to hear.
So the whole time, let's move into Spock and Michael. I really feel, and this episode really brought it out, I think both Spock and Michael are egotistical. because they are both feeling that everything revolves around them. And my evidence, I guess, to this is Spock is so concerned that the red angel, it spoke to me. Why did it tell me? What is unique about me? Like it's me, 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 me. And with Burnham, and Spock points out, where multiple times in the episode, he's like, you can't even see past your face because you think that everything is your fault. You take the blame. Your parents dying in the clean. You are behind a closet door and you still take the blame. It is not your fault, but you believe it's your fault. And it's like, they're both so egotistical that they think the whole world revolves around them.
Yes, but Spock takes that a step farther too, because he even says, he didn't just say that you believe it's all, on you. He says, because it's easier than to admit, paraphrasing, basically it's easier to admit that you screwed up and to shoulder all the burden than that you did nothing.
Right.
That you couldn't fix it. It's easier for you to admit that I just screwed up really bad. Heavily paraphrased. But, and I thought that was a great added line in there because
it is.
They are.
But it's on him as well.
Of course, they're both egotistical.
Yes.
Just like their father, just like their mother. That whole family is egomaniacs. That's not necessarily a bad thing if used correctly, but you can see how Sarek puts everything on him. The world revolves around him.
Right.
The Starfleet revolves around him and making sure it works right. So this is not something new in this family. This is what they've been trained to be since they were kids.
Yes, I agree. And it's getting almost in the way of the story. I don't know.
No, I think that's the whole point because I don't think they're going to get an answer until they realize that they have to cut it out.
Yeah.
Look, the Red Angel did pick Spock, right? So it did talk to Spock. Now, it could just be as simple as you were standing there at that moment. Mm-hmm. Not very Starfleet. Not very Star Trek to me. And Airiam says, this is all because of you to Burnham. So that's not going to help her ego.
Oh, no.
To let this go. I think the writers should, at least in my head, be writing this that they're going to figure it out together why the two of them were important to this story. Mm-hmm. And when they do, we'll have our answer.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to ask you, and I love that Spock asked the question, says, is the signal using the angel or the other way around? So do you think that the signals are using the angel or do you think that the angel is using the signals?
I've been giving this a lot of thought because I knew you were going to bring it up and I don't have a clue. I don't know if the angel is going to signals or the angel is pulling them in for tests. Initially, we believed that the Red Angel had put them there. They went there, they fixed something, and this was all a test.
Right.
I don't have a clue anymore.
I sort of think that the Red Angel is controlling the signals.
Well, that's what I initially thought.
Yeah.
And if you put a gun to my head and made me pick one,
yes.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
But it's been questioned so many times now by so many different people that it would almost be a letdown if that happened because why'd you keep trying to just throw me off? You know what I mean? Like it'd be almost like, all right, so all that other nonsense was just to make me think something else than what I'd already thought. Got it.
Yeah, and it's sort of, I like this idea because it's very Star Trek. We've seen it a lot, like the chicken and the egg. What came first,
Yes. And like I said, I if gun to my head, I would definitely pick
the Red Angel controlling.
Yeah, putting these red symbols because there was no red symbol when they went and talked to Spock. At least that we know about, right?
Right.
They did.
Yeah, when the very first sighting.
Right. That we know about, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know. I would tend to sway that way. I would tend to sway that yes, these are meant to be seen. But by the same token, that seems like a really terrible way of doing things if you're the Red Angel. Hey, I want to save this civilization. Here's this giant red star. Come get it. And that's great until the first malicious society goes and finds those symbols and just wipes out whoever's on the planet you just sent them to.
Yeah, I guess I didn't think about that.
Yeah, well, no, because we see Discovery going. So it's always it's not a malicious
good thing.
group.
Yeah.
Right. But that's not necessarily how that would happen.
Right.
In real life anyway, so.
Yeah. So are you liking the Spock and Michael tension as siblings?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I love it because we need it. We need it. We need to know why they don't talk. Even if we have to get it crammed down our throat 20 or 30 more times. Because every time there's a big blow up, you would think, well, they're siblings, that should be over. But it's not. And, you know, when she says it's out of character for you, hey, we haven't seen each other in 10 years. You don't know what's out of character for me anymore. It was a great line.
I love that because unfortunately, I don't see one of my brothers that often. And so I couldn't even talk about what his character is because I don't see him. I'm not in communication. And so for me to just all of a sudden blurt out, that's not in your character. I don't know, you know?
Exactly. Now, I think it's very important she said that's not in your character because if she said that's not how you were raised, she could still be right.
Right.
By saying character, she's wrong. Mm-hmm. She was around for his raising, but 10 years is a long time and people change.
So one thing I liked about the whole interaction when they were playing chess, like she's calling him out. It's like, you should take my rook, you know, your bishop should take my rook or, you know, whatever.
Don't sacrifice your rook.
Yeah. She's playing with the assumption, which is game theory, which is mathematics. She's under the assumption that Spock is playing to win, where he is not having that assumption. He is not playing to win. You know, he is testing this chaos theory that you talked about before that they used later on with the mines. Like, he's trying to not win, but to exceed Michael's expectations of what his move is going to be. I don't know if exceeds is the right word, but
no, but
he's trying to circumvent her expectations.
Well, yeah, well, the only thing I would disagree with is I think he is trying to win. He's trying to win the game. He's just not doing it in the logical fashion they were taught. There's a difference. Because she says, you're not trying to win. And he goes, that's I don't remember the exact words, but he says that's kind of an insane assumption considering I'm a willing participant in the game.
Right.
So I think he's trying to win the game. He's just not doing it by holding on to the most pieces. Because that's where we get the argument and we learn more about the father, right? We learn more about Sarek, where she says, well, you know, father taught me a more elegant strategy the first time we played, and then he goes off on there's a lot of things that father doesn't know, which I thought was a great tirade too, because there's clearly family issues here. There always has been. I mean, that's Spock and dad issues have been notorious through Star Trek, and they're still continuing them here, which is good. That wouldn't make sense for them not to. And Michael is now kind of shoving that in his face, and he's pushing back, which makes perfect sense. Also, we realize he's not emotionalist yet, so he's still heavily emotional. Right,
which I loved seeing that because I think that it develops Spock's character a little bit more than Michael's character, because when she pushes back and sort of, I don't know, they're having this argument, you know, while they're playing chess, and it's like, you don't know what's in Sarek's mind or father's mind. Well, in fact, we do know from season 1 that, you know, they have had this connection, right? So Michael really does know what's in Sarek's mind.
Well, okay, so let me add into that.
Okay.
We see that Spock uses her humanity, the fact that she's a human, to wipe away the fact that she could possibly understand what Sarek is thinking because he's Vulcan, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Because I'm not a Vulcan, I can't know what my father is thinking. Let's forget the fact that their minds connected. Let's forget that she saw how he turned her away from the Vulcan Science Academy because Spock was going to go, and then he doesn't. Mm-hmm. So, you know, he goes to Starfleet, which was a big problem. But let's forget all of that. Let's just remember that she grew up with the man. So, of course, she would understand what he was thinking at times.
Well,
or how his mind works. He should, but that doesn't mean, right, but he could understand how his mind works, but his claim is that because you're human, you don't understand.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's not that you don't understand because you haven't been there, because Spock would have no way of saying otherwise because he hasn't been there. He couldn't, you know, that line of that he used on her a minute ago about you don't know anything about me because I've been gone for 10 years doesn't work with Sarek, because then Spock couldn't presume to be right either because he's been gone. But he says he says something about your human mind could never presume what father is thinking or something along those lines. And so he's blaming the fact that she's human on the fact that she can't understand what he's thinking.
Right.
Which is ridiculous. It's a little bit of racism right there.
Yeah, I agree with you. So one other thing that I like about this is that we get the progression of Spock's character a little bit more than what we see with Michael Burnham's, because in their dialogue, Spock at the end reveals to us, and I think to himself, he is in the moment enjoying feeling these feelings. Like he's done trying to have this pretense of squashing them and, their Vulcan way. I am enjoying, it's the first time that he's enjoying feeling these emotions. Like that to me adds a completely different level and complexity with Spock, whereas Burnham is still on the same story of taking on responsibility and stuff. Like, I feel that this episode really adds to Spock's character because now it's not that he's worried about the Red Angel. He is, but we're also getting this personal side of him that we never really knew existed.
Oh, absolutely. And also, as you were saying it, I didn't think of it, but as you were saying it, this also mirrors what we saw early on for Burnham. When Burnham first shows up on the show, she's very Vulcan, even though she's not technically a Vulcan. And little by little, we saw her get more and more human as the series has gone on. And this kind of is going down the same path with, we know it doesn't last forever with him, but he's kind of on that same part of the path now where he's letting his humanity out a little bit more, despite the fact that 2 episodes ago he said, because of you, I know that humanity is my weakness. So I think what we see is this part of the journey for Michael happened last season where she realized that humanity wasn't necessarily a negative, that it wasn't going to hurt her to be more human-like. And we're kind of in that path with Spock right now that he's still trying to feel out his emotions and if he can or can't use them. Now, we know as it goes on, at some point he becomes much more Vulcan than human, but he never completely walks away from his humanity like he's claiming he's going to now. You know?
Right, yeah.
So, Amy, do you have any final thoughts on this episode?
Well, let's see. We definitely have covered quite a bit. The whole Airiam story definitely has its pros and its cons. Definitely hearing what the fans have to say and knowing her entire story.
Oh, wait. We actually didn't talk about the most important part of the Airiam story.
What?
What do you think Airiam meant when she said this is all because of you?
Okay, whatever. I think the most important was that she said, you have to, and I'm sorry, I'm paraphrasing, you have to get to Project Daedalus. There's the title. There it is. We need to get to that project, whatever it is.
Yeah, okay, but that's going to answer the question she had asked a minute earlier. So, we're saying the same thing. What do you think is going to be found there then?
So people have said that confirms that Michael Burnham is the Red Angel.
That's ridiculous. It does not. It might. It might turn out that way, but it doesn't confirm anything.
I'm just saying what people say.
I know. But we didn't talk about it, and that seemed to be a very important part of the whole entire episode, considering we literally built up and killed a character to get there and didn't even talk about it. So, but I agree that if you were looking for reasons to make Michael the Red Angel, that definitely helps your argument. But I don't think that necessarily nails it in stone.
I don't like the fact that line was used because I don't think really ever in the big scheme of things that one person has that much influence. Like, this cannot be all Michael Burnham's fault. This cannot be all her doing. Like, I just don't get why they put such gravity on Michael Burnham. Like, and I'm sorry, World War II, it was not all Adolf Hitler.
No, but thank you for making my point, because history doesn't remember everyone else. That's
right.
why.
Okay.
So Airiam got her information from a probe 500 years from now, right? That's what started this?
Right.
That her being hacked. So history would remember Michael Burnham or Spock or the revolution of America remembers a handful of people.
Right.
There's no way they could beat the British with a handful of people.
Right.
So that's just the way history is written. So
that's true.
I understand using the word all seems ridiculous, but that's kind of the way history books are written.
That is a very good point. All right. I'm okay with the line now. Thank you.
No problem. Back to your final thoughts.
Well, so my final thoughts. I actually saw some people say that this is their favorite episode, and that's fine with you. It wasn't my favorite. I really was pulled out of it a couple of times with some of the dialogue and what I was feeling. We didn't even talk about Commander Non. Do not get me started. We did not even talk about... See, I'm throwing in my nitpicks here. We did not even talk about the spinning as we come in. I am so done with it. Jonathan Frakes, you could have done so much better. You are better than that. So there definitely was some things that I didn't enjoy about this episode, but after my rewatch, I really enjoyed, the furthering of the story, especially with Section 31 and that link to control, understanding control a little bit better, and understanding again that connectedness that we get from the sphere. And I still am wanting my Klingons. So I'm just going to end it with that.
Okay. So my final thoughts, I do enjoy where the story was moved to by the end of this episode. I really enjoyed it. I don't think they did it in the most economical way, but I do like where we end up at the end. Now, this is definitely not my favorite episode. If I confused anyone by that earlier on, I'm sorry. There was a lot of good things. There was a lot of bad things. And so, like you were just throwing them in there, one of my bad things is how Tilly acted, which was ridiculous, when Cornwell shows up and being willing to throw the rest of the crew under the bus for being fugitives when she was the one who said, I think you have the crew. But moving past that, it was, and again, I want to make this clear because I got yelled at for not liking Mary Weissman. I think she played the part perfect. I think it was written like garbage. Big difference. Her talking to Airiam as she was dying and telling her things, like, I think you adore me and I adore you too. That's all well and good. And that's the Tilly I like. That's the one that I really want to see more of, but I guess we're not going to. And I did enjoy it, even though there's those negatives. I didn't care for Airiam's death, but the fact that where it brings the story, I'm okay with it happening, if that makes sense. I just didn't have the impact that I think the writers intended for it to have for me. It did for a lot of people. And one of the other things that I'm really interested in, and I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but this is kind of taken from the Star Trek book Control, Section 31 Control by David Mack. And I would love to hear his thoughts on this, because that's what happened in that book where Control took over and Bashir was trying to stop them. So I'd like to know what he thinks of this episode personally. It's been fun talking about Project Daedalus today, but this isn't the only thing we've been discussing on the network. So here's a quick look at some of the other things you may have missed elsewhere on Trek FM.
Previously on Trek.fm, Literary Treks.
Like you said, some of the recent novels have gone with Commander Una, which is, if I'm remembering correctly, they explain a name she's kind of adopted because she got tired of people just calling her number one or something like that. But it's still referring to this backstory of her being the best of the best, being perfect from Illyria, which is a planet that embraces genetic manipulation, I think, and that sort of thing, and breeding for the absolute best. And she was number one in her generation or something like that.
Melodic Treks.
So, but after I watched Star Trek Voyager, and I was aware of the existence of the Mini-Moog Voyager. It didn't take me long to just it would be cool one day, if I could acquire the synth, the first thing I'd do with it is redo the Star Trek Voyager theme with it. Wouldn't that be fun? The Star Trek Voyager theme performed by the Mini-Moog Voyager, right?
Warp 5.
So I'm going to go to Sleeping Dogs for my next episode here. Now, at this point in Star Trek, I'm really tired of the Klingons, and I was on my original watch of Enterprise, and I still am. I'm really, really tired of the Klingons, so Did I say the right episode? Sleeping Dogs, I said, right?
Yes.
You're just looking at me funny here. I'm like, did I say Shadows of Pajama?
No, you said Sleeping Dogs.
Okay, good. So,
The Edge, a Star Trek Discovery podcast.
She is with a fake him, but she even says, well, it's you, but it's really only my memory of you.
Right.
Like, that line is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I'm not the sappiest person on the planet by any stretch of the imagination. Anyone who's heard me talk for months on this network knows that. But this is heartbreaking stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what else is happening on Trek.fm.
Check out all these shows and join the conversation about your favorite corner of the Star Trek universe and beyond. You'll find us wherever you get your podcasts. If you're an Apple user, be sure to hit the subscribe button in Apple Podcasts on iPhone, iPad, or Apple TV, or the desktop iTunes app to get the latest episodes as soon as they are published. And please leave us a star rating and written review. Now, Patrick, we are still continuing our iTunes giveaway where we have the amazing Captain Pike pin by Fansets. And listeners, if you leave us a written review and star rating on iTunes, your name will be entered into the drawing. Currently, we have a total of 7 entries so far. This is going for the end of these. So it goes until season 2 ends. So you have a couple more weeks left to leave us a review on iTunes so that you can win the Captain Pike pin. I love wearing it. He's amazing. It looks great. So please do that.
If you're not an Apple user, we've got you covered as well. You can find our shows on Google Play Music, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spreaker, SoundCloud, YouTube, Windows Phone, and most third-party apps, and you can stream and download the MP3 file from our website or grab the RSS link.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's show, and there are many ways for you to do that. The best place to join in the larger conversation is the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type Babel, Babel, into the search field on Facebook, and it will come right up. If you'd like to send us an email, you can use the form on our website at trek.fm/contact. Choose to send to a show and select the Edge. That will come right to me. You can also find the network on Twitter at TrekFM and on Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM. So, Patrick, where can people find you when you are not avoiding space mines?
Oh, man. Well, I can't text and drive in space. I definitely hit 1 or 2. So, but when I'm not doing that, you can find me on Twitter at MagicDrop5. It's a single word, no spaces, and the 5 is actually a digit. You can also find me popping up in the Babel Conference from time to time. And that's happening more frequently of late. And you can find me coming every other week over on Warp 5 with my buddy Brandon, where we talk Enterprise and tie-ins and movies and all kinds of stuff. Actually, now we have quite a log of weird conversations over there.
Yeah,
so,
you guys are a weird bunch.
Yeah, well, they had movie night, so we have movie night. It works out. So Amy, where can people reach you when you're not 100% sure that you're all responsible for everything that happens across the entire country when it comes to schools and every child?
All right, when I'm not
Was
doing
that enough
that, I like you got that multiple.
Yep.
Love it. Well, you can find me here on the network where I co-host Earl Grey, which talks about the next generation. I'm also on the Fandom Podcast Network talking Discoville, and that is about the Orville and Discovery. I am also on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson, but my favorite place is right here in the Babel Conference.
If you'd like to help us keep all our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/TrekFM. That's patreon.com/TrekFM to get all the details. Perks include early access to episodes, exclusive content, producer credits, and more. Available through our special patrons website, Patron Zone. It requires a great deal of money to produce, host, and distribute these shows each month. We really appreciate any support you can give us and hope you'll join the team. Again, you'll find all the details on patreon.com/TrekFM, which is where I first got involved with the network because I was 125% sure I wanted to be involved.
Shut up.
I didn't get that one in the beginning. I had to add it.
Ooh, this just, you're pushing the bear or poking the bear.
Yeah.
Well, we'd like to 100% thank our associate producers. They are Norman Lau, Tony Robinson, Thomas Puleo, Lisa Slack, Shoaib Mirza, Richard Rutledge, James Muldrow, Cornelia Reutner, Ryan Mallett, Chris Trebuzio, and Brian Malosh. Now, I would like to point out that I said Brian's name correctly because I actually participated in Live from the Edge. Patrick, you got to join us on Live one of these Friday nights.
Yeah. So, yeah, I really do.
They're really fun.
I know, but the problem with the Live is not, there's actually no problem with the Live. The problem for me is that's when I'm involved in my other community with that wrestling game.
Right.
So it's hard for me to be involved at the same time. But I should have some weeks coming up that I'm free from that.
Well,
so
it's Friday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. So
yes.
Yeah,
it's a good time. It's just, unfortunately, it's a good time for people to be doing things.
Yeah.
So
it's 6 p.m. my time. And that's like right Friday, going out dinners. Yeah.
So
anyways, I have caught a couple of them this season, and they really have been fun. But anyways, thank you, our associate producers. We absolutely love you and really appreciate all that you do for the network.
Thank you for listening, and join us next time to see what's happening on the edge of 125% of Federation space.